The film Lincoln is a historical drama that recounts the final months of U.S. President Abraham Lincoln's life. Directed by Steven Spielberg, with a screenplay by Tony Kushner, and starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Sally Field, and Tommy Lee Jones, the film was released in 2012 and runs for 150 minutes. The story begins after Lincoln's re-election in 1865, as the Civil War is nearing its end. Lincoln ponders what will happen to the slaves once the war is over. Despite his 1863 Emancipation Proclamation that freed many slaves to join the war effort, slavery remains legal. Lincoln sees a constitutional amendment abolishing slavery as the only solution. Lincoln meets a white couple from Missouri and asks their opinion on freeing the slaves. The wife agrees if it will end the war, but changes her mind when told the war is already over, fearing freed slaves will take their jobs. Lincoln insists the 13th Amendment must pass before the war ends. While the Senate approves the amendment, the House resists. Lincoln engages lobbyists to persuade representatives and influences key Republican leaders like Preston Blair and his son. Blair insists on inviting Confederate leaders to Washington to negotiate peace, which embarrasses Lincoln. Ending the war this way could mean a return to slavery. Lincoln relies on radicals from Pennsylvania, led by Thaddeus Stevens, who advocate for full racial equality, including black voting rights. Meanwhile, Lincoln's wife Mary Todd, who supports the amendment, suffers from headaches due to fear of her husband's assassination, especially after losing their son Willie 3 years earlier. Their eldest son, Robert, insists on leaving his Harvard law studies to join the Army, causing Mary severe anxiety. Lincoln unsuccessfully tries to dissuade him but assures Mary he'll place Robert under General Ulysses S. Grant's staff to keep him safe. General Grant informs Lincoln that Confederate negotiators want to come to Washington. Lincoln instructs Grant to detain them until the amendment passes. During the House voting session, opponents demand a delay due to the detained negotiators. But the vote proceeds, and the amendment is ratified, abolishing slavery constitutionally. Post-vote, Lincoln meets with the Confederate delegation and negotiates the end of the war in exchange for the amendment's approval. The Confederates agree after their defeat. Lincoln visits the army in Virginia, surveying the dead with sorrow. He instructs the general to spare Southern soldiers upon surrender. Days after the surrender, Abraham Lincoln is assassinated.